wouldn't it be better off? Please tell me if I'm an idiot. If I'm an idiot,
You're an idiot. Continue.
Welcome.
You good, kid?
My ears. Do you like the outsides of your ears get itchy?
The procedure's backwards, or you are backwards, facing away from the camera? You can if you
the wrong kind of seat.
Yeah. All right, Kit, can you stop? Kit. Can we make a...
I don't know.
This sucks.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening. On tonight's episode, Cameron and Garfunkel make a pretty terrible video describing what happened at the Bend. The video is terrible because either Cameron or Garfunkel lost the footage from the Bend, and so we're going to piece this together with our incredible storytelling abilities, plus the footage that was captured mostly on phones by people who were with us on the weekend.
Yeah, so what actually happened is Cam did animate this. He did claymation. It looked incredible. Recorded it, smushed all the clay, and
He left the computer on too high and melted.
Threw his computer into a weir. And that's why it's not animated, which is why we have to do this.
After I fished my computer out of the weir, only very small amounts of the footage were remaining.
So, in the beginning, we created a car. We did it. We ruined a car. In the beginning, we ruined a car.
In the beginning, we ruined a car.
And then we tried to fix it a bit, and that's where we're picking the story up from. We've tried to fix it a bit, and we're leaving. You may have seen in the last video, it's the morning we're leaving. The car's on jack stands, doesn't have wheels. And then Cam was pretty salty about Nick and I not being there, and then we had a bit of an argument, and then we pack the car up and we drive. We just started driving the 7.5 hours to Taylor Bend.
Only stopping every 15 to 20 minutes because the car kept moving on the trailer. You'll also note an asymmetric sticker layout. That's not permanent, that was just a time issue. So we got to the Bend, we applied the remaining stickers, only creasing them significantly, and we were pretty confident. We did the final checks, and Kit was starting the race. He hadn't started one of our races yet. We got him geared up and sent him out on the warm-up, and everything, I believe, felt pretty good on the warm-up.
Yeah, so I did the warm-up. Immediately, first lap into the warm-up, the car was just so much better. With the gearbox was just slotting into gears like nothing. The rear was obviously a lot stiffer because of sway bar and spring, so it was turning in beautifully. The car felt absolutely amazing compared to Calder, where it felt really fast but kind of like a piece of shit. It just felt fast and dialed and balanced, and it was amazing. It was the best the cars had felt yet. So did the practice, came in, everything's all good, and then start of the race, it was awesome. We were making moves, making passes.
Kit was actually driving pretty well for once. We started first in class, but we were still leading in class about halfway through Kit's stint.
Only 3 or 4 cars had passed us, and these were much more powerful cars.
Yeah, so it was pretty exciting. We're all having fun, I think, at that point. As
supportive teammates, we were focusing on what Kit was doing on track and not getting distracted trying to help friends' cars as they pulled into the pits overheating. Some of those friends' cars didn't really appreciate that though, and took out their... I'm losing track of this analogy. Nash's car exploded in Gav's face and my face. And you can see that footage here slowed down to half of what the phone that was recording the camera screen's frame rate is.
Yeah, it was like a proper explosion.
Yeah. So it was the coolant expansion tank on the opposite side of the engine bay from where Gav and I were standing.
And you didn't even open it, did you?
No, it exploded.
Yeah.
No, it burst the tank.
It was kind of like hissing and stuff, and I'm not sure how you can see, we coyly looked around the bonnet, just sticky baking, where we probably should have been focusing on our own issues that we weren't having yet. And we thought we'd go and help / mock our good friends at Government Funded Racing, and it really blew up in our face.
Yeah. So surprisingly, from watching the footage, no one was hurt by that. I can remember the steam that actually hit my face was quite cool by the time it reached it. The hottest bit was the bigger drops of water that landed on my back after I turned around. But I think we're all actually pretty lucky that no one was hurt in that one because it was quite a big one. It's also not the first or last time that car has done something very similar to that.
After the explosion had finished and we all sort of got back to concentrating.
It was nearly the end of Kit's stint because I had gone back to the pit to put on my fireproof stuff to refuel.
And the rest of us had gone back up onto the roof to keep watching. As we reached the rooftop,
we get the call saying it's a fire. And they said it's a yellow Corona, and our hearts dropped.
It's the only yellow Corona. It couldn't be anyone else.
The car was on fire and
Kit had survived like a coward.
Don't go down with the Corona.
So one rule we set for us, the car goes down, the driver goes with it.
Yeah.
So where Kit had stopped the car, or where the car had stopped Kit, was out of sight from the top of the building, and all we knew was that it had been on fire. Eventually, once in our minds the fire had subsided, Kit got back in the car and was able to radio back to the pit wall, and all he told us was the intake manifold was on fire, which is a pretty odd thing to say.
In the comments, put if your intake manifold's ever caught fire.
On the dash, the danger to the manifold light came on, and he was checking the floor, but the manifold caught on fire.
This was the sight that greeted us when Kit pulled back into the pit lane.
Yeah.
We were expecting a charred mass. Instead, it was just coolant everywhere, which was a bit confusing.
And some funny smells, some very bad smells.
Kit actually, as per usual, lied to us, and it had just melted and smoked a little bit. No even real fire. I don't know.
You're only saying that because there's no GoPro footage. Can I tell my side?
You tell yourself.
Okay. So,
this is a flashback sequence.
So Carl was doing fantastic, but like was mentioned, we don't care what's happening in the engine bay. So we were still running the Camry Dash with its janky coolant temp sensor, which we never really trusted, and for some reason over 2 races never thought that we should fix that. It's constantly full of blobbing over the place.
Yeah, and it was like an electrical problem, not the fact that sometimes the sensor was reading air and sometimes it was reading water.
So I was 50, 60 minutes in, whatever, it was doing its normal thing. But then I'm pretty aggro about watching the gauges, so it seemed like it was trending hotter, even with all the oscillations. So I actually slowed down because I also kind of felt the car, I don't know if it was my brain, but it felt like it was starting to lose a bit of power. So I took an easy lap to see if they would come down. And then halfway through that easy lap, coming out of the corner, it just went and actually just stopped. So clutch in, off the track into the grass, stopped the car. I was sitting there for probably 20 seconds just waiting for the rescue people to come and drag me out. And then at that point you would have seen the GoPro footage that came through in the smoke, even though our firewall was pretty wally at this point, smoke started filling the cabin from the front and it smelled really bad. So you would have seen me in the footage that doesn't exist anymore, sort of sit there and ponder for a little bit and then grab the fire extinguisher out and hop out of the car. At that point, the fireys were basically there because I'd been sitting there for a little bit. Then at that point, after I'd gotten out, smoke was pretty billowing out from under the bonnet. So the fireys got me to open the bonnet as they had their extinguishers. As we opened the bonnet, smoke went everywhere, but before they sprayed any, I said, no, don't ruin the car. So I shoved my face in, and our intake, most of the smoke was actually...
At least if it burnt down, it would have been clean.
Yeah, most of the smoke was actually coming from some oil and bits and pieces that were on the engine, but the really bad smell and some of the other smoke was coming from the intake's mating surface. I could see at this point, and I think it was still when I came in, it was actually bubbling up molten plastic from the mating surface.
If you haven't seen our other videos, we designed and had 3D printed our own intake manifold.
And in our defense, it doesn't melt to 180 degrees.
That combined with the oil was, I think, pretty close to an actual fire, but luckily it was just the hottest it's any car has ever been. So we let it sit for a little bit, and then they towed me back in, and that's when we opened it again and had a proper look. We didn't really know what had happened at that point. We thought potentially we'd had some air in the system and it had pressurized it. We'd lost a bit of coolant, as you can see. Some coolant was in the engine bay, and we thought it had overheated. But for the car to actually stop from overheating is not a fantastic sign.
I think at this point we thought that the intake manifold had melted and given us an enormous vacuum leak.
Yes.
Which is what had stopped
The
the car.
vacuum leak had stopped the car, and that's what we thought. And like it had got hot because of the vacuum leak, because it was running lean, and it was fine. We just quickly whipped the intake manifold off, which was going to be an easy job. Put a bit of RTV on it, and then put it back on and take our rightful place at the top of the podium.
Our first sign that something more serious was going on was probably when Kit and my dad donned all his PPE, like his thongs and his shorts, and opened the hot radiator, and it was completely dry. Which was then the case when we took off the radiator hoses as well. The entire coolant system was empty.
At this point, we still thought just intake manifold was our problem. So
We knew it had got warm, we knew we'd had some coolant overflow, but we were all deliriously optimistic. We really struggled to get the intake manifold off. Like melting it on, I don't recommend. I'd say bolt your intake manifold on.
So we
Good seal, though.
foolishly had studs on it, right? So we could take the nut off, but then the intake manifold had melted a thread into itself and onto the stud. And so I think we used like pry bars and
Screwdrivers and hammers.
screwdrivers and
I don't know specifically what bending load you designed into the intake manifold, but I'm certain exceeded it.
Here's said intake manifold. You can see the fix we tried to do with a lot of RTV.
When we finally got it off, and we like probably celebrated when we got it off. It was so hard.
It was hours. to get
That
it
was
off.
so much time because we couldn't break it, because if we broke it then we were completely f***ed. If we broke it then that was definitely our weekend over. If we could carefully get it off and somehow salvage it, then we thought there was a good chance we'd be able to run again.
We finally got it off. We tried to sand it on the concrete floor first, and that didn't work. Too tough. And then we asked if anyone had a belt sander, which no one did. I don't know why no one brought a belt sander to the racetrack. We went to the race shop to see if they had something, and then the race shop didn't, but there's a workshop attached to the race shop. And
Put their business name up here or something to say thanks.
yeah, and we traded them.
Oh, we gave them beers.
we traded,
No free plugs.
and they let us use their belt linisher, and that wasn't quite big enough. It didn't cover the whole width, and it wasn't the whole length. It was actually pretty annoying and a waste of beer. But we got it flat enough, we thought, and you can see the amount of RTV we put on it, and we slapped that sucker back on, and we bolted it up, and we were pretty confident, and we started to fill it with water.
And as we were doing that, we could hear a pretty substantial leak going onto the floor, which we thought...
I thought it sounded like someone had left the bottom hose off the radiator.
Yeah, it was a lot. Basically everything we were pouring in was coming straight out. So I hopped under the car with a torch and got Cam to pour some more water in, and then I got waterboarded pretty bad. And what it turned out to be was water absolutely gushing out between the head and the block. And I've never seen... I've seen weep out, whatever, but for a cold engine to be actually gushing water out between the block and the head, it didn't look too good.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Now, I've blown some head gaskets in my time, but nothing like this.
You could see, with the head still on the block, you could see the gap. It was that warped.
I don't know how we didn't notice it earlier.
Well, we weren't looking at it.
Blind optimism.
Yeah. So at that point, we realized that the car turning itself off was just complete loss of compression on at least, I want to say, 2 cylinders.
Yeah, that was a dip in morale. We might be putting it slightly, but...
Yeah, for context, before we left, Kit tried to convince us to take a spare head, and Cam and I said if we did a head gasket, we were coming home. We weren't going to fix it there. And we meant that. And I would say if Cam had driven first, not Kit, I reckon he would have made us go home.
I'll agree with that.
The motor events community really showed up. Like, it was actually pretty overwhelming the amount of people we had flowing into the garage with offers of parts and tools and help and advice and
Discount cards.
quite a few people just having a sticky beak.
It's good having people come through and mock, because if you don't laugh, you'll cry. And we were probably pretty close to crying.
Mockery is the best medicine.
Yeah, I say.
Once we realised that the head mating surface was now sinusoidal, we all sooked for a while, and then we did decide that we were going to try and at least investigate whether there was a possibility of getting back out on track. So,
Well, we were going to have to take it off at some point, so we thought we might as well start.
Look, the straight edge was so warped that it was 5 mil away from the head. Our perfectly dead flat head.
But the block seemed savable. The iron block, obviously, it seemed like it was still pretty flat somehow.
Yeah,
And the balls looked fine.
When you have a closed deck iron block and an alloy head, the alloy head is essentially a mechanical fuse. And boy, did we blow that fuse. Yeah, we called a bunch of places. Cam found a place that told him unequivocally,
they said, we have that head on a shelf.
yeah, like Alf on the shelf, but a 3S head.
Spoiler alert, they didn't have that head on a shelf.
So the plan was we get up at the crack of dawn and drive into Adelaide. We took our bent head and we were going to go to a head shop to see if they could machine it or sell us gaskets or head bolts or something. And we turned up there and they had a big sign that said the best head jobs in Adelaide. And they told us that they couldn't help us and probably that we were idiots. And so we drove to the wreckers that had the head that didn't have the head. And then they said to go to another wreckers that didn't have the head. And then we went and got a Chico roll from a servo. And then we went to another wreckers when they opened and they didn't have a head. And then we accidentally drove past the wreckers.
Yeah,
Like this.
we were just driving between two wreckers and saw the largest warehouse I've ever seen in my entire life that said secondhand car parts on it. Like, it was enormous.
Yeah.
May as well try our luck. This place is Hoyge. And went in, chatted to the guy behind the desk. He searched up. He was like, yeah, I can help you. And he told us we could have it for $250. He went and retrieved it, and when he got back, as we were paying, like Timu Danny Trejo from 2 desks back was like...
Yeah, a Danny Trejo cosplayer. Like Cuban heels on his boots, the tightest pair of black jeans.
Slicked back hair,
Like-
big mustache.
It looked like he was wearing a costume that cost him $15.
Yeah.
Like hair and mustache wise.
Of Danny Trejo.
Yeah.
And like full respect to Danny Trejo. It's this guy that we have a problem with.
And so he pipes up from 2 desks back and goes, aren't you the guys we chatted to on the phone? And I was like, nah, because if you'd said we had this head, we would have come straight here. He was like, no, I definitely did. And it was $450.
Yeah, he wanted $450. We said, we've just bought this thing for $250. He said, I'll meet you in the middle, $400. And
We went into position to
we were so desperate. We bought this rusty, probably not flat head from Danny Trejo and Associates. We spent more on a bad head than we did on a whole running engine.
There's also really no point to us mentioning the Danny Trejo thing. We're all just sour about it. And he was a bit of a character.
It wasn't his crank though, so it's okay.
Yeah. Everyone knows the crank is the soul of the engine.
What kind of is?
It's the legs, obviously. No, the rods are the legs. The crank's the hips, you idiot.
The oil pickup, surely the heart.
Oil pump, I reckon. Heart?
Yeah, it's pumping it. Yeah.
Yeah, but what's the water pump then?
The lungs?
No, sweat.
No, because it's got
Yeah,
like
intake.
intake
It's our
for
lymphatic
lungs.
system.
Yeah,
What's the
What's
pistons?
exhaust?
What are the pistons?
the feet.
The feet. Yeah.
No.
Feet, legs, hips.
Pistons have got to be
The
stomach.
pistons of the capillary action somewhere.
No, the pistons are eating all of the calories.
it's eating the air and the exhaust
fuel.
and the fuel. Yeah.
It's a bit confusing because it has a stomach-lung combo in the combustion chamber.
The point is, we had a head, and we'd sourced head bolts, head gasket, some other little bits and pieces, but weren't going to get the head gasket until 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
We dispatched several of the people that were there to support us, like our dad and various partners and things, to just parts shops all over South Australia to find bits for us.
Yeah, but so we headed back to the track to get everything completely ready to go, ready for that head gasket, and then just smack it all back together.
By an incredible stroke of luck, there was a head machining service in the pit lane. That was called Gav, and Gav had a bit of sandpaper and a sanding block that we'd picked up at Repco. Clearly, this isn't the ideal way to flatten a head, but we had to get some gasket material off it, and we figured it was probably better than nothing.
This wasn't flattening, this was cleaning, and we're just trying to get all the old burnt on, crusty old head gasket off till you can. So you want to sand until you can see the machining marks on the head, and once you can see them, you know that the gasket's not there anymore because you can't see it. And it's
just tricks you come up after years in the trade. Like, if you can't see the gasket, it's probably not there anymore. We got the head gasket in the Arvo, managed to get everything back together, but seeing as there was a lot of RTV in places there's not normally meant to be RTV, we wanted to let it sit overnight to give us the best chance of everything sealing and holding in all our fluids. So we went home for the night, wanted to get to the track early the next day to fill everything up and hopefully get the whole day of driving the next day.
Despite what you would have learnt about us if you'd watched any of our previous videos, we actually weren't really fighting through all of this. Like, generally when the stress increases, the fighting increases, but we're actually working very well as a team. And so, probably just so everyone felt at home, Gav and Kit had a quick fight over this thing that made a funny noise that we found at the Airbnb.
It's sick. Wait, give it back.
Is it a timer?
No, it's just a toy.
I don't think it is. No, it's for a game. I've played this game before.
What game do you need?
So we got there early in the morning to just check that our RTV was actually set after only 12 hours. Thankfully it was fully set. So I got shipped off to the driver briefing because that's a legally mandated thing, whilst the others looked at the car and just did their final checks. And then when I got back from the driver briefing, we tried to fire the car up.
What Nick doesn't know is because he was at the driver briefing. Actually, we were all at the driving briefing, but Nick stayed longer. But after the driver briefing that we were all at, but Nick was staying longer at, we were trying to start the car and it wasn't starting.
It was cranking and it sounded like it had no compression.
But then, like the geniuses we are, we took the valve cover off and then we could see that the valves were getting stuck open.
Probably half of them. So what I did...
Well, just to get in front of this, if you're claiming that whacking it was your idea, I'm going to push back pretty heavily.
No, because the idea that worked was my idea that you guys all said was dumb and wouldn't work.
Which was what?
I covered him in oil and heat gunned the fuck.
Well, I think the whacking helped.
No.
The whacking, it was a group effort.
The whacking didn't help because they got stuck again immediately.
We collectively put our heads together and we came up with hit it with something.
I covered all the buckets with oil and then set a heat gun on every stuck one whilst cranking the engine over, and each one slowly, after like a minute of the heat gun, would start to slowly pop back up, then go back down again.
The whacking contributed to this pretty heavily.
Slowly,
the whacking did help.
Yeah.
And gradually...
The whacking helped brought them back up after they went down. Kit also, with this super hot heat gun, permanently scarred my body.
It started to actually get some compression, so we chucked the valve cover back on. The race was probably 2 minutes about from starting for that day. Crank it over. Bam, starts like a treat.
We showed positive affirmations to each other in public on camera. after it started. That's how monumental this was.
That's why we deleted the footage so no one can ever see.
Yeah, that's why I came through it in a weir.
Once the car started, I was suiting up because more than anyone, I had attended the driver's briefing and knew what was happening for the day.
We also attended the driver's briefing. Our minds were just sort of elsewhere, and our bodies were also elsewhere.
I've jumped in the car, I've been plugged into everything, and then it was a similar volume to the Big Bang came into my ears.
That happened in a vacuum.
Yeah, but if it had happened in air,
It would sound like this.
Yeah, all right. So the Big Bang that transported into a particle-dense part of the universe.
In my ears.
If the Big Bang had happened in Garage 18 at the Ben Motorsport Park, this is what it would have sounded like. I was strapping Nick in, and I could hear the static with my ears, which weren't in his helmet.
Hell, that's just static. Turn it off. Just static.
Just static the whole
Still just static.
Once that was all over, he pushed me out onto the track, and as I was leaving pit lane, I could see the second last car only going through turn one. So we got out the start of the third day, not losing any more ground to any of the other cars.
Yeah, because
more than the 2 3/4 days we'd already lost. I don't know if you can tell from this footage, I was pretty stressed about whether the car was going to be leaking coolant or fuel or oil, or if it was going to make it past the end of pit lane. We had Nick do one lap under the safety car and come back in so he could check stuff, and he reported that it was all good, and we sent him back out again.
Oh, one thing that I was doing while the big boys were doing proper engine things is I installed a water temperature sensor. So we could monitor how hot we were getting in the future. This was zip tied to the fuel gauge, which was zip tied to the cluster. So it was quite the dangle.
some of our better work.
The GoPro footage you're watching now is the only surviving proper footage from the bend. So
Yeah, Cam fished it out of the weir.
So lucky you, I guess. As you can see, Nick was able to put his foot down on the main straight and row through the gears, and Sonny was back up and cooking. Despite government-funded steam getting out aggressively on day one, they also had managed to get their car back out on track for 1 or 2 laps at a time before it overheated, or the exhaust fell off, or it caught fire,
or burnt through a plug lead.
Or it burnt through a plug lead, or its timing went all out of whack, or
just the exhaust were turned upside down and facing us in the pits.
Yeah, there was, we had one big calamity, they had a million little ones.
Being able to pass them and both being out of track was worth a huge shucker out. Yeah.
Someone had recently taught Nick what a shucker was, and he hadn't quite got the hang of it yet.
We all did end up driving the car, but how was the car, Nick?
The car was good. Just sort of feeling the brakes properly, it's like nothing I've ever felt before. I don't know about you guys, but just being able to brake at 50 metres no matter the corner was going flat out for 1 kilometre, 50 metres brake turn in to a 90-degree right hander was pretty crazy.
Because we didn't mention, this was also the first time testing the new rear brakes and the new master and everything, and it was pretty phenomenal how well the car had behaved under braking and how much confidence we all had in the pedal, I think.
Yeah.
Towards the end of my stint, coming out of a couple of corners, the car started chugging and missing, just not getting all the power that the 89 kilowatts of an SV21 Camry you'd expect from it anyway. So I came in just thinking there was low fuel, and so we came in, topped her up, and then Gavin
Did go for a stint, and man, I was so quick. We'd lost some power with our melted intake, but it was still pretty quick and kind of competitive on the back on the windy bits. Luckily, came through all the footage in the weir, because I got in the biggest tank slapper I think I've ever been in, and probably ever.
History's largest tank slapper.
I was coming in to refuel. I think we were doing 40-minute stints or an hour stints or something, not quite a full stint. But the temps, everything was good. I came into the pits, and down pit lane, temps started to rise, and then I went out the back and we were going to refuel. And when I got out the back, Gauges went to max, everything went to max. Killed the car, jumped out, yelled at everyone that were over at the refueling bay because I was probably 150 metres away to come quick and get their last look at our car before it melted into the ground. Cam decided to take the radiator cap off an overheating car. How'd that play out?
First of all, I'd like to blame my father for these instincts. As we've already seen in this video, he loves to be the first guy to take a radiator cap off an overheating car.
It almost happened in slow motion, watching the world's most foolish man take the lid off a pressure vessel after already having a pressure vessel blow up in his face this weekend.
I think we would all agree it's probably not my finest moment. It also resulted in a pretty lengthy wait in the medical bay while they made sure that my finger wasn't going to fall off or explode or catch on fire or whatever very badly burnt fingers do. So ran it under the cold tap under medical supervision for quite a while, and I was supposed to be getting in the car, but Kit got in the car for that stint. Kit went out and had his stint, and I borrowed Gav's gloves because my hand had swollen up so much from all the hot water I got on it, and I got in the car for the last stint, and yeah, as the fellas said, it handled awesome, and this was my first opportunity to feel the new brakes, and like, yeah, they're not wrong. That's pretty sick.
Pretty good braking.
Pretty good braking. As the organisers of motor events have sort of begun to do, they gave us an award for having a broken car. This time it was the Die Hard Award, which is for people persevering through mechanical strife, and like some of the other awards we've got, it's very kind of them and very nice, and people are very friendly, but boy, I'd like to win some awards for being good.
They came to us with a very basic, but very much in the spirit of Motor Events car last year, and then they decided to rip half of it out and put a new engine in, new gearbox, different diff, different brakes, and of course everything broke. But we want to highlight the effort that you guys put in to getting your car back on the track and finishing. So the Die Hard Award goes to SubPar Endurance Racing.
Yes!
Yeah, so we've got an award each event we've done. Oh no, we left all early from Calder, but I imagine would have got a you idiots, you crashed into the wall. And it's all very like, oh, you guys are doing this in the spirit. But
it's very kind of them, but it would really be really nice to get one that didn't have sympathy attached.
Yeah. So our plan is to start getting some real awards and having some people really start to respect us.
Well, that's really what it's all about.
It's winning, yeah.
As I learned from Dominic Toretto that racing is all about respect, and so that's what we do it for.
Yeah, as they make us chant before every event, Motor Events Racing, very, very serious.
All about the awards.
All about the awards.
After the race was done, we took a quick photo with the other most awarded team, our garage mates, Government Funded Racing. You can see where there should be a headlight, there's a coolant expansion tank, unexploded this time.
We're all pretty happy, I think, on the way home, just purely based on what we were able to fix.
We were happy compared to what it could have been.
Once again, it's a motor events event that was a lot of fun that we would have liked to have participated in more of. These events at the one at the Bend in particular is amazing, but all the stuff motor events put together is a lot of fun. And one of these days we will be on track for all of it, and we'll only have positive things to end a video on. Today is not that day. We worked well as a team, which is rare, and we got through some mechanical adversity. I'm always wading through mechanical adversity.
If only you waded through the rear.
It's still fun. Going racing is fun, but it's more fun when your car works.
One of the cool parts about Motor Events Racing is you get to go have a lot of fun, race with your mates, but you also get to raise money for Rare Cancers Australia. So you can donate to Rare Cancers Australia using us as a vessel. If you go on the link that Cam's going to animate below. Our next event is
It's the
Malala. It's technically called, but that's a test session. So don't donate to that one. Donate all our money to the Malala one, please.
That's our next.
Malala. It'll be Malala M24 2025.
That's our
the next race that Studio Us are doing. We should explain that now that the Bend 2024 is over. That's our last event for 2024, and the work on Sunny to get it ready for the Winton Rumble 2025 will begin next week. We're very excited for that race, and now that we've discovered all of the issues that a 3SFE swapped Corona can have, I don't anticipate there will be any more.
Yeah, there is no way we spend any time in the pits the next race. But the point of this whole thing is, if you feel like you can, please donate to Rare Cancers Australia. We would appreciate it. I think Motor Events would appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think it's a good cause.
Yeah, Motor Events is at the latest tally raised $260,000 for Rare Cancers Australia already. So they're doing good work, raising good money, and yeah, we'd love to get that number even higher.
If your pockets are overflowing with likes and subscribes, you could chuck some towards this charitable case. And
now we're talking about charities. How about helping out these guys? Your 4 best mates from the internet.
Yeah, they help the algorithm show our videos to other people, and so we can get more mates on the internet. All right, Kit's getting cross because it's cold, and thanks for watching. Catch you next time.
Absolutely.